Next, campaigners in Scotland are taking action against the government, saying some of its policies are not in line with the recent Supreme Court ruling on the definition of a woman. For Women Scotland says rules on transgender pupils in schools are among those that they say are in clear breach of the judgment, which was delivered in April. A spokesperson for the Scottish Government said they are not able to comment on live proceedings. Susan Smith is the director of For Women Scotland. Hello, Susan.
Hello, Stephen.
Good to talk to you, Susan. So tell us why you're bringing this challenge.
Well, we took the Supreme Court challenge, obviously, in April, and we did it really to ensure that protections for women and girls were in place and were obeyed and adhered to. And what we've seen since the ruling is that while some organisations, the police, have taken action, and actually the Scottish Parliament itself has taken action, but most of the government policies and policies in the public sector in Scotland, like the NHS, for example, but specifically in the cases we're looking at, schools and prisons, they still allow for people to self-identify as the opposite sex and gain access to single-sex spaces and services.
And even if that's the case, Susan, who's it harming?
Well, quite a lot of people, especially very vulnerable women in prison who have reported really quite serious harms from being locked up with some of these incredibly violent men. There are still men in the women's estate in Scotland. There are at least 4 murderers, we believe, locked up with women. And women have complained, especially after they've been released. We've heard of women who've been absolutely traumatized by having to use the showers with these men. And some of them have got into relationships with other prisoners, not necessarily consensual in some cases. So it's especially.
But that's prison, isn't it? We were talking about the NHS.
Prison.
I was intrigued.
But it's the prison. It's the prison policy that we're challenging. So it's not the NHS policies. It's the prison policy and the schools policy.
And in schools, how are children being affected?
Well,
Still.
we know from what we've heard in what has happened in schools is that because there's this guidance that is not lawful, and it says that children can choose to go into the changing rooms or enter the sports teams of the opposite sex. It also very vaguely says girls' rights have to be protected. And what some schools have then done is just make it all, for example, all the toilet facilities in the school gender neutral. And last year in December, a boy of 15 was arrested because he'd been putting hidden cameras in these toilets and recording the girls. And we know a lot of girls aren't drinking water because they don't want to go into the toilets. We know that there's sadly an increase in sexual assaults in schools. So it's about keeping people safe. It's a massive safeguarding red flag when children have been encouraged to transgress these boundaries.
Now, Susan, someone putting a camera in toilets, that's a criminal offence. It's voyeurism. And
yes.
it happens, doesn't it? It happens between, no matter what the law will say on transgender people. It is criminality. And it is rare, isn't it? What is wrong with a gender neutral toilet? Where's the harm in that?
The reason we tend not to have gender-neutral toilets and have single-sex facilities is because these rates of voyeurism, exposure, abuse accelerate in those spaces. That most of these sort of sexual offences happen in gender-neutral spaces. They don't tend to happen in single-sex spaces because it's harder. So it's about safeguarding. It's making sure that those people don't have the opportunity, because it's all very well to say, well, if they're caught, they'll face criminal sanction. But it's far better for the victims that these crimes never happen in the first place. And when we're talking about children, it's really important that we protect them. And parents expect their schools to be safe places for their children. They don't want them to be running the gauntlet of potential sexual abuse.
I made a podcast for the BBC, Nolan Investigates Stonewall. It was a 12-part
Yes,
podcast, myself and David Thompson, who's a
it
colleague of
was
mine at the BBC.
excellent.
And I made that podcast. And when I was looking at the different angles around children, I think, Susan, we all need to stand back, do we not? And understand that there is a difference between an adult, and look, they have very genuine concerns as well, but where is the compassion and the patience and the realization that children need to be protected, whether they are for or against your views on transgender? And they may have
It's
mental health difficulties, and we need to be very, very careful here, don't we?
absolutely, but
That
it's
passionate
not.
people like you are still remembering that children need protected in school.
Well, they do need protected, and that's the point.
But
All children need
transgender children need protected, don't they
all
too?
children need to be protected. And we're not saying that those children should be exposed to harm either. I mean, this is the false narrative that is put out. And actually, I heard about a little girl who was identifying as a boy. And actually, by putting that little girl into boys' spaces, she has been exposed to harm. And especially if there's a culture where people are keeping secrets, because that's a real safeguarding red flag. So I think when we talk about harm, we have to be very, very careful and think, what is best practice? What do we know from years of looking at safeguarding? And what we do know is that we have to protect all children, and we have to hold everybody to high standards. We can't just lower the standards. And there is no reason why children cannot be provided with specific tailored solutions if they have any additional reasons why they might not want to participate in going into their own sex changing room. And we can work around that, but we don't protect them by making all the other children in the school equally unsafe.
And finally, Susan, when does this legal action go through? When do you pursue it? When's it hit
Well,
court?
the Scottish government now has 21 days to respond. They may, the sensible thing would be for them to say they will withdraw the unlawful guidance, and that would be great, and we can all go home happy. But if they decide otherwise, then it will proceed to court, and we will know a bit more about the timetable at that point. But they will then have to go to court and argue why these policies are not unlawful.
Thanks very much for talking to me tonight, Susan. Thank you very much.